And we are live. Welcome to another broadcast of RSL Nation's Lions Den. Your host, yours truly, Adele, with my co-host.
Akir,
What's happening,
nailed it.
folks?
Nailed it.
We're getting better and better at this. Today's podcast has one very specific reason. We're going to talk about Real Salt Lake's 2017 defense. We'll go through the roster, top to bottom, see what everyone's up to these days. We'll discuss possible pairings, possible, probable, in our opinion, starting lineups. We'll take it from there. So, Mr. Bakir,
What's up? What's up?
have you been following the preseason much?
I think I've caught all but one game.
All but one game.
Whenever the stream is up, that is. I was watching the Vancouver game, and like halfway through the second half, just fades to black. It's a real shame.
Things can get a little feisty in the preseason. Didn't the whole Kansas City rivalry started in the preseason a few years ago, if I remember correctly?
It did. It was down in that Desert Diamond Cup dealio, and I mean, I right now, if my life depended on it, I couldn't remember exactly what happened, but benches were cleared and guys were, it was a free for all out there, from what I hear. And one of the most beautiful organic rivalries in MLS soccer was born that day.
That's how they should be.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to hear one more thing about NYCFC and New York Red Bulls, being shoved down my throat, I think I might lose my mind.
But they have to take a train to get back and forth. Have you been to the New York subway system?
They use the subway in New York.
I'd be mad too. Hey, you know what? You know what? Every time I see a good brawl, I always miss one specific, particular individual, Mr. Jamison Olave. I mean, be honest. A soccer fight breaks out. You pick your starting 11 to fight in your honor. Does Olave make it? Is he the first or second pick?
And it's MLS only?
It's MLS only.
Yeah, he's definitely on the short. I think that's like a guaranteed he's on the list.
If nothing else, he can just beat a wall. He can beat a shield.
Right, just run around him. I mean, it takes a minute to circumnavigate the guy.
That's one big dude, man. That's just a walking piece of muscle.
Yeah, he's gonna be missed on the field, for many reasons. But he's one of the guys that I think Deloy Hansen loves, and from what I hear, he's sticking around as like a assistant coach in the academy.
As he should. I've always loved that man. I never understood why fans gave him so much crap, but they were so mad at him because, sure, he got a few red cards. Let's face it, most of those red cards were not his fault. Right? Most of those red cards were a matter of bad positioning. Now, don't get me wrong. There were times over the past 12 months, over the past season, where it just looked like he was not aware that he's not the old Olave. Like he doesn't have the speed or the stamina he had a few years ago. And he positioned himself on defense so that he can catch up to players because that's what he could do 5 years ago. Well, no longer the case.
Right. I mean, I think when you say, I don't know why fans, yada, 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 you have to understand that the fan base has grown like wildfire, even in the just last 3 years alone. So when you say, of Olave of old, it's not many people, in the modern version of the fan base even really understand or remember what, Olave says no means.
Right.
They weren't there for that. They weren't for like the, lowest goals conceded season record, which RSL still holds, I think, at like 20. They don't recognize that Olave was part of that.
It wasn't just a part of that. He was that.
Right. It's I mean, the physicality and just the ability to, he's just a physical presence on defense. And I think that, he definitely did lose a step. And, old age it'll get everyone at some point. And, I think it's a shame that the most recent memory of Olave is the guy that kept getting red cards, because I think there was this generation of where he just played beautiful footy. And, I think the average fan on the street doesn't recognize that.
And I know Trump thinks he coined the phrase grab her by the you know what. He actually did it. He grabbed people by their balls. Remember when he did that to Omez Garcia?
Yeah, it's I can't say I remember. I definitely heard of it. I was I joined the community a little late, but
Yeah, that
that's
guy
not a
does
guy
not
I would
mess
want.
around.
Yeah,
That guy does not mess around. Well, we welcome all the new community members of the RSL Nation. Well, one thing is for sure, he will be missed this year because he has retired. He has decided to retire deservedly. He is going to stick around as a assistant coach's position or something along
right.
those lines.
I think
Great to
specifically
have.
at the Harriman Academy.
Ah, very cool. Well, that was
Yeah.
one of Deloy's plans. He wanted to be able to keep players like, and I quote, Javier Morales around. Well, Javi didn't stick around, but maybe we can make some other people stick around with that
Next
academy.
best thing.
Next best thing, Javi Morales or Olave.
Six of
Anyways,
one,
so
half a dozen of the other.
here's what we have right now on the roster on as defenders for Real Salt Lake. Let me read
Right.
them to you, top to bottom. Tony Beltran, Justin Glad, David Horst, Aaron Mond, Damar Phillips, Chris Schuler, Chris Wingard, and then we have Regan Dunk and Justin Schmidt, who are
Correct.
officially still unsigned.
I think as of the RSL.com, like the team roster, but I'm fairly certain that it's more or less official. I think the reason they're unsigned is because it's still preseason, and realistically, I don't want to take away from uh, Justin Schmidt or David Horst, but or Reagan Dunk for that matter. But realistically, at least two of those three are going to see some Monarchs minutes and will be Monarchs players as opposed to Real Salt Lake players.
Well, not David Horst. David Horst is an experience. He's signed. He's not an
Right.
unsigned.
He will. I mean, it's realistically going to be Schmidt, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
yeah.
So he has had some good moments in the preseason from what I've seen.
hmm I haven't had the pleasure to watch them very much this preseason yet. Well, let's start at the very top. Break this down. Tony Beltran is now 29 years old.
29 years old.
Two Pony Tony, as some people have lovingly referred to him last year. Do you think he still has what it takes to play? Well, he will. I think he will start. He will be out starting right back.
I agree.
Do you think he is rightfully our starting right back?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you kind of got to see where the season goes, especially as you approach that early half of the year, and who knows what happens in the summer signings. But I think given the current roster and the current position of the team, I mean that's Tony's role is that back right. It's the guy has I think he said he has the record for most games with a single MLS team. Like not a lot of people realize like he was here before Javi and Nick Ramondo and Kyle Beckerman. Like this guy's a company man, as they say, through and through. I like Tony. He brings a certain, I think, stability and accountability and physicality to that role. The guy's in fantastic shape. Do I think he's the absolute end all be all in that position? No. But I also don't think if you look at our defensive needs that that's the place where you go for an immediate fix. That being said, that position, you bring in somebody with a bit of a higher caliber, I could see being a total game changer. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I'm on the fence about Tony. I feel good about Tony, but there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I think that's an easy place. I like Tony, first of all. He's been playing with us, yeah, like you said, for quite a while, and he's reliable. He will not make a lot of mistakes. I think the game is evolving to a place that requires the outside backs on both sides to be much more offensive,
Right.
to cross more balls in. I don't think he's got the stamina. I don't think he's got the speed. I don't think he's got the skill set to consistently do that for us on the right side, to allow us to create that threat up front in front of the goal with Yura. I don't think we have a better option anytime soon. But I think Tony Beltran is our starting right back. It will be this year, most likely throughout the year. But I agree. I think it's a position we need to look to upgrade sometime soon. So we both agree. Tony Beltran is our starting right back.
Absolutely.
Should we talk about Reagan Dunk? I don't know anything about this guy yet.
I mean, I think realistically, it's Monarchs minutes. Maybe he comes up for a Open Cup appearance here or there. I know he was in the in the draft that he was the number one, or he was the ideal pick for our front office. I think the guy does have some good skills on the ball. He's good one-on-one. Overall, I can't say I've seen him play a whole lot. I've seen flashes of brilliance and just flashes of total. What was he thinking? He's 23. He's coming to us, I believe, from Denver, and I think time will tell with this signing. I think too soon to really make a call.
Yeah, sounds about right. So who's the replacement right back?
If things go south,
Well, Tony Beltran can't play 90 minutes every single game throughout the year.
right? I mean, I think realistically, we're looking at Chris Winger.
Chris Winger as the replacement right back?
Well, it's so in the friendly against Vancouver, Demar Phillips was playing the right back position, and Chris Wingard played the traditional left. I think realistically, at least from what I've seen in the preseason, it looks like I think the ideal pairing is Tony Beltran with Demar Phillips, obviously, and then the kind of reverse of that would be Demar Phillips with Chris Wingard.
So you're talking about Tony Beltran, Demar Phillips, Chris Wingard. Demar Phillips, Tony Beltran are starting. Chris Wingard is substituting between the two positions, left and right, depending on who needs a sub.
Right. I think realistically that is the rotation for those outside roles. From what I've seen, I don't know if there are expectations or if it's kind of Dunk's role to lose. But from what I have seen, it's those I think realistically will be the rotations in those two roles.
That works for me.
Whatever gets the job
that means we have the exact same. I thought, well, while we're on Demar Phillips, 33 years old, so he's getting up there a little bit. When he came into the league, when he came to us, I honestly thought he was the game changer that this team needed. That was just completely going to flip this team on its head in a positive way. I was envisioning him running up and down that left side, crossing balls in, taking shots from outside the box. I mean, just being unstoppable, because that's what his highlights led me to believe he would be able to do for us. That first year, I won't lie, man, I was a little disappointed. I don't think
Right.
he even close to delivered what his capabilities were at that time. I know he was gone quite a while. He was gone with injury. He was gone with the Jamaican national team, so he missed quite a bit of time. But even when he was on the field, I thought he was very underwhelming. Then last year, he was my top 3 pick for player of the year on the whole team. And I know we had some up and down times last year, but he was one of the most reliable, most consistent players, as far as I'm concerned, on the entire team. I was genuinely shocked whenever I didn't see him on the starting lineup if he wasn't unavailable for any point.
Right.
So I think Demar Phillips, for me, out of the two sides, Demar Phillips is a lock to play in. And I think we take a huge hit when we have to substitute in Chris Wingard,
Absolutely.
whether during the game or for other reasons. So
I think realistically, what you lose is an offensive threat. I would say that defensively, unless the opposing player is significantly faster than Wingard, we pick up on defense in that position because I think DeMar Phillips sometimes likes to overcommit on that role, where he's a little too far forward and doesn't necessarily track back to defend. But
Hmm.
I think 9 times out of 10, you're absolutely right as far as him being the ideal starter. I don't think that's even up for debate.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the outsides are fun. Now let's get to the middle, to the central defenders.
Central defense. Woo.
It seems it's almost tattooed in our brains that we need to talk about we need a better central defender every single year for the past quite a few years.
Right.
I don't think we need a better central defender. I think we're pretty set on central defense. We're not very deep, I think, but we're pretty set. Well, I'm talking about Justin Glad, Aaron Mond, and Chris Schuler. Start two, bench one. Which two do you start in your book?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, everyone's available, everyone's healthy. For me, the answer is Glad and Mond. Um, I think just given from what we saw last year, those two earned that starting position the hard way. I mean, they. I remember starting the season last year being like, we are going to leak goals like no one's business. And I would go so far as to say that CB pairing kept us in some games we had no business being in.
Mhm.
I think it's those two positions are the chemistry is of paramount importance. Players that can communicate well with the keeper and just get organized. It's a it's a thinking man's role. It's you gotta sit there and you gotta know what's going on. You gotta be vigilant. You can't fall asleep on the ball. You can't get caught ball watching. And I think Aaron Mon and Justin Glad have built that partnership through blood, sweat, and tears. And it wasn't always pretty. And I'm sure there will be mistakes. I mean, Glad is 19 years old. He is with the under 20 U.S. men's national team. That's insane. Guy can't legally buy a drink. Um, it's there's going to be mistakes, and it's not always going to be pretty. But for me, the obvious answer is, if available, those two start.
I agree with Justin Glad. That's a no-brainer for me, and I think he's the future. He's the future Olave of the late '00s when Olave was Defensive Player of the Year.
Sure.
I want to say Net Borchers. I think his skill level is above Net Borchers. I think he's the central defender of the. I mean, he's our central defender of the future, provided we can actually keep him
Right. I think
for the long period.
2-3 years from now, some big European club comes and makes us an offer we can't refuse.
I have a feeling that might happen, especially with the exposure he's getting with the under 20 national team at the World Cup.
Right.
Speaking of the under 20 national team at the World Cup, good for him. I'm really happy he's going to these tournaments. But that means he's most likely going to miss a pretty decent chunk of RSL games in the early going of the season.
Absolutely.
Which leads us to the only real option that I can think of here that comes in for him would be Chris Schuler.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the next guy in the rotation cycle. I love Schuler. Love Schuler. I think he's a fantastic player.
Let me
I
stop you
love
right there.
Mont.
Stop. You love what Schuler? The Schuler from 2 years ago before he got injured? The Schuler who uh, in small chunks came back last year after the injury?
Yeah, it's
I
definitely
mean,
pre-injury Schuler.
yeah.
And I'm hoping he can get back to that level. Um, but I think you never want to wish ill on anybody, and I'm just hoping that they can stay healthy and just stay on his feet. But for me, I think the bigger problem is even fully healthy, Aaron Chris Schuler and Aaron Mond fill a very similar type of defender role for me. It is they do a I think you need a traditional CB pairing has kind of the not trying to insult anybody. He's got the muscle and the brains, and I think we got two muscle guys out there with Aaron Mond and Chris Schuler. And that might not always necessarily get the job done. I think you need somebody like a Glad out there.
So to you, the 19-year-old Glad is the brains of the defense?
I mean, the kid, I think, listens well. I think he communicates well. Like, you look at that back line, I mean, it's 9 times out of 10 super organized. I'm not saying he's, ready to take on a veteran leadership role in the locker room or anything, but I think the kid definitely knows when it's time to talk, when it's time to cover runs, when it's time to fall back, when it's time to step up. I'm really not trying to take away from Aaron Mond or Chris Schuler, but I think to me those two guys fill a physicality in that CB role that is good to have, but you don't need twice over. So while I think that with the absence of Glad, we have a Chris Schuler filling it traditionally, might not be the best option.
Well, what do you think about David Horst? I haven't watched a lot of preseason at all. I've tried to stay caught up as much as possible. Has he seen any minutes?
I think he's got a few minutes. He's looked good. From what I can remember, a little shaky here and there, but nothing that scared me a whole lot. I think he, well, I mean, I know he likes to score on RSL every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's I think, I don't know if he's 90 minutes ready is my primary concern with Horst. I think he's a guy you bring on when you're trying to slow the game down a little bit and you're trying to preserve a lead. I don't know if he's a starter.
Mm-hmm. He's a big dude. I like him in the central defender role. We'll be pretty big in the central defense, no matter who's playing back there.
Yeah, 6'4", not a small kid.
Yeah, he's a big addition, literally and figuratively. He's a big addition, I think, and he's got that experience. He can step in late in the game, close the game down for us, like you said. Probably not 90 minutes ready. So in Justin's absence, it's Aaron Mond and it's Aaron Mond and Chris Schuler. I think in my opinion, that's a big. Provided I haven't seen Chris Schuler play in a while, unless something significant has happened over the last very short little while. I think that's a huge downgrade from the starting defense, our starting defense. Do you agree?
I think so. I don't think we are as deep in that central defender role as we think we are.
Yeah. So, what do you, if you're the GM, what do you add? Forget whom. What do you add? You have one thing to add. What would you add to this defense?
It's we keep hearing about that mystery Turkish CB that's supposed to be a huge deal. I think I'd like to see some regular MLS games played before I honestly make that call, just because, maybe I'm totally wrong and CB just is locked up and we're great and it turns into a wall and you don't get scored on and then you look for somebody to fill that outside back role that can make a huge impact on offense. But I think offensively we're plenty dangerous. At least I hope so. My money is for a veteran CB that can teach some of the young guys a little bit, but also be a starter when you need him to, and just really bring a stability to that back line. In my mind, that's where I'd put my money.
Wise words, my friend. Wise words. I would add an outside back, a new outside. We need to have at least one, if not both, provided that our guy DeMar Phillips can replicate what he did last year. Maybe get even more offensive from time to time when Kyle drops back a little bit. We need that right wing to be the same way. We need the wings running up and down the wings, crossing the ball in. I love Tony Beltran. I'm not convinced that I think we can upgrade that easily with someone. I'm not sure you can get someone who's much more reliable, if anyone who's more reliable, period.
I don't think
But I
you get
think,
more reliable than
but
Tony.
you can, but I'll take a little risk. Well, sufficient amount of risk in some cases with someone like a DeMar Phillips, a right-footed DeMar Phillips on the right side, maybe a few years younger than DeMar Phillips, that can run the flanks up and down, cross the ball in. Um, and from time to time, when they get away from us, when they try to get around or break the offside trap, actually catch up to a forward, and also someone who can from time to time take a shot. I think with the three people up front, with the three forwards, there should be sufficient amount of space for other players to run on the defense and take a few shots. So I would upgrade that right back position um, first. Now, this, of course, depends on whether we can stay healthy. This is everything we're saying is a perfect world scenario,
Right.
right? Central defense, I think you cannot do without. So if these three stay healthy, I think between the three of them, two should be playing well the whole year. Any other closing statements on RSL's defense? And before that, or with that, tell me one more time your final lineup, right to left in defense projection.
I mean, I think no other comments. I think we covered it pretty well. No surprises here. I think Tony, um, Mon Glad or Glad Bond, however they prefer to line up, and then DeMar Phillips. It's tried, it's true, it's tested, it's battle hardened, and it doesn't give up goals easily.
And first guy off the bench, Chris Wingert on the outsides, and Chris Schuler from the insides.
Absolutely, two Chris's. Two
Wonderful.
Chris's don't
Can't
make a
agree
wrong.
more. Can't agree more. Well, thank you very much for joining us. On our next show, our next podcast, we'll take care of our midfield.
This
That
should
should
be a
be
good one.
interesting. That should be interesting. This was too easy. We agree on this one. I know for a
Right.
fact that we will not agree on the midfield.
No, we will not. That's the
Till
beautiful thing.
next time, folks.